So I'm just going to start with territorial land acknowledgement about the University of Waterloo, just to acknowledge that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land granted to 6 nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. So we're actually really fortunate here in the Dean's office within the Faculty of Health that we have Elder Maigan Henry, who works just a couple doors down from me. And he is our knowledge keeper on campus and a wealth of knowledge. So you'll see him at many events. You'll see him at convocation ceremonies. If you aren't aware, actually on sort of right outside of PAC, outside of SLC PAC area there, they're actually building an Indigenous gathering space as well. So lots of really great things happening on campus. All right, so let's just kind of go over what's going to happen for the next little bit here, and then we will dive right in. Thanks everyone for coming today and for submitting your questions ahead of time. So we will kind of get things started with some questions that were submitted. But then as we go throughout, please feel free to unmute yourself, turn your camera on, write in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with, to throw some extra questions at the 3 of our alumni here. So we'll kind of do it both ways, but if you have additional questions, raise your hand, pop in at any time. We are happy to answer as many questions as we possibly can. All righty, so let's start with quick introductions. I was actually just saying before some people popped on, I've known Alex and Naime for many years. We kind of grew up together, went to schools, elementary school, high school together. So the community at Waterloo is so awesome. Derek and I were the same program and we worked together within athletics. So very fortunate to have some great connections across the university campus. But today's not about me, it's about you guys. So let's learn a little bit more about what you do. So Derek, do you want to kick us off with a quick what's up in your life?
Yeah, for sure. So when I signed up for this opportunity, I was the sports services coordinator with the city of Vancouver. As of Monday, I'm actually in a new position. I'm now the supervisor of all indoor aquatics. So since leaving the University of Waterloo, I came out here right away within 2 weeks of finishing my master's in recreation and leisure. I was on a plane. I knew I was coming out here because the municipal recreation system out in Vancouver is so large. And I can kind of touch on it more as we go on today, but the last 6 years have just been slowly progressing through different parts of this organization to get to where I am today as the supervisor of indoor aquatics.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Derek. Alex, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex House. My current role, I'm a projects leader at OFIA. OFIA stands for the Ontario Physical and Health Education Association, which is a mouthful, so OFIA for short. I've been in this role for about 2.5 years now. I did my master's in public health at the University of Waterloo. So I did my MPH at UW from 2018 to 2020. During my MPH, I did my practicum with OFIA, which is kind of how I got introduced to the organization, did some work with them. After my practicum was done, I did some kind of consultant work, and they still kind of, I did some work kind of on the side for them here and there. And then they had a position open up, and I've been with them ever since. So a nice little kind of introduction to OFIA through my MPH, which was great. And yeah, we work a lot. Our kind of space within the health space is within education. So we work a lot with teachers and with students on kind of creating resources and programs for increasing healthy active living and connecting educators to the health and phys ed curriculum. And we won't go into too much more detail because I feel like I've chatted for a bit, but it's a little bit about me and kind of what I do right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Over to you, Naime.
So hi, everyone. My name is Naime. I did my undergrad and my master's at UW as well. So I did my undergrad and my master's both in kinesiology. I was very fortunate that as soon as I finished at UW that I was able to get a job at the Y, where I work with individuals with different chronic conditions in exercise prescription. And then I transitioned into more of a clinical role at St. Mary's Hospital in Cardiac Rehab. And I actually recently left that role to pursue my own business. So I do own a small gym studio in uptown Waterloo. It's called Movementality. And I prescribe exercise to individuals with chronic disease.
That's awesome. Thanks, Emma. We have some questions directed to you about being a business owner a little bit later.
That's nerve-wracking.
Oh, no. It's not nothing too tricky here. No tricky. Yeah. Okay, we'll go backwards around this time. So Naime, Alex, Derek. So the first question we have for you here is, can you tell us about one area where you feel Waterloo helped prepare you for your future? Something that comes to mind.
So mine would definitely be the hands-on experience that I had through like different volunteer experiences, but also through my coursework. That really helped me transition right away into the real world, which was very helpful. So although with your academics in school, everything is very heavily based on like understanding physiology and biomechanics and all of that stuff with regards to kin, it also allowed me to do lab work that was very representative of what I would actually be able to do out in the real world with people. So I really appreciated that because I was able to dive in and understand that as soon as I actually got a position that I valued and was interested in.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Alex, anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, a couple things actually. So the first thing that comes to mind, and I don't think this was intentional with the MPH program, but for anyone who is familiar with the MPH program at UW, it is an online, it's a distance course, which has its pros and its cons, but I started back in 2018. So even before COVID, it was an online program. And then, kind of coming into like the post-COVID or during COVID kind of world, a lot of work that we do with other people, other organizations, other professionals did switch to online. So I think a bit of an unintentional kind of thing that the MPH set me up for was like working collaboratively with others online, which came from, I think, COVID, because that's something that we see a lot of now and maybe didn't see quite as much before COVID. So a little bit of an unintentional kind of how the MPH set me up there. The other main thing that comes to mind is specifically with the kind of how my program set me up for the role that I'm in is I think all the different kind of concepts and topics that were covered. And again, this is really specific to my MPH, but a lot of what was kind of covered and what we worked on, I see in my role today. So for example, touching on evaluation, touching on kind of planning and implementation when it comes to like health promotion programming, that a lot of that we see within the projects that I lead, how to evaluate our programs and our resources, going through the planning and implementation of those programs and resources. So everything, a lot of the pieces that we touch on in my MPH, I will use and see those come up within my job. So just kind of the variety of things that that we learn and kind of touched on, still continue to see throughout my role at Ophia.
That's great. Derek, what about you? How did Waterloo help you out?
Yeah, also similar to that variety piece. So speaking of the recreation department at Waterloo, I was in recreation and sport business, and then I was in recreation and leisure for my master's. And in that undergrad, I didn't really understand at the time how beneficial it would be to be so flexible with what I could take. Like, and I took accounting, marketing, business science or management sciences, business at Laurier, a whole bunch of different things, which was all fascinating to learn about. But then even just applying that into my context, it has been so beneficial to have that broad transcript. Out here, the municipal system is just much bigger in British Columbia and in Vancouver specifically. And so the recreation programs that they have out here are A, mostly at the college level, but B, kind of directed for municipal recreation. So I came out thinking almost the opposite of, oh no, I'm up against all these people who have very specific education to go into the municipal recreation stream. But it ended up being so beneficial for me to have that breadth of experience outside of that. especially as I was making the jump from those introductory, like intro level positions in the organization to then a coordinator, supervisor level, right? And so then I had this experience in this transcript and the master's specifically that these other folks didn't have. And I couldn't necessarily appreciate that until it was benefiting me the way that it was. And I didn't always view it as that beneficial thing, but it was very clear moving up in the world and in the organization that was kind of a hidden superpower that I had because I had that diverse transcript and took those different classes. And I wish I had taken an HR class. I've had to learn that as I go, but
Same.
other than that, take your HR classes. Other than that, yeah, diversify what you're taking and have that experience. So.
Superpowers are always good powers to have. So
Yeah.
Awesome. I do have lots of questions here to go through, but I just wanted to open it up to the floor. Are there any questions from any of you that are on the call right now that you would like to ask the panel? Like I said, you can just unmute yourself, raise your hand, or write in the chat, whatever is easiest. And if not, I'll keep plugging along with the ones that I have here. Did someone just pop on? Okay. All right. So can you remind me who was in co-op and who wasn't in co-op in their undergrads? Co-op there?
Yeah.
Naime, were you in co-op?
I wasn't. I switched out, actually.
Okay. And then Alex, did you have a co-op program in your undergrad?
I didn't, no.
Okay. So then, Derek, my first question will be for you is, can you give it advice on how to this question is really long, so I'm just trying to shorten it. But essentially, like, do you have any advice for students who are in co-op to make themselves stand out in the co-op application process? Or, you know, like, how were you successful in landing any positions through the Waterloo co-op stream?
Yeah, so kind of something that was beneficial to me. Oh, I seem to be cutting out. Am I still in?
You're good. Yep.
Yeah, okay. My own screen just kind of glitched there. Beneficial to me in that context that isn't so much anymore in a more of a unionized system is the networking piece. So what I ended up doing is I took the easy route, I will call it, for my first co-op placement because I was a transfer student. I transferred from Laurentian University up in Sudbury down to Waterloo into my second year of undergrad. So coming into that 2A, is that what we call the trimester? The fall session, and then going right into a co-op in my second session at Waterloo. I knew nobody. I didn't know the co-op system. So I set up my own placement through something that was familiar to me, which was an outdoor education like camp in Rockwood, Ontario. So that was kind of safe, my little spot to start with to get my feet under me. After that, I was applying to things in more so the stream of recreation. I ended up working for the Department of Athletics and Recreation, where I met two of the three lovely folks that you see in front of you. And in that case, I stood out, I think, by being a person and not just an applicant, right? I got to the interview process and I tried to just be the personable, outgoing person that I am, so that I wasn't just somebody, applying for this job. Please, please, please give me this job. For me, that looked like making a joke about how our old boss, and I both had beards, and I was, saying, I was so unsure, like, should I have shaved my beard? Is it unprofessional? What, yada, 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 because I could tell that this guy spent at least 15 minutes on his beard every morning. And so, making that light joke, that light connection, I was then, in his eyes, a human. I wasn't an applicant. I then used those opportunities to kind of get to know other folks within the athletic department. I ended up doing a sports marketing opportunity with Jenny over in the actual head office. And again, that was because I then took the opportunities that I had in the athletics department to meet other folks, to get my name out there, to express my value almost to these folks. And anytime that you're in a field that can benefit from who you know, that is maybe what can help you stand out is by not only putting in the work and being a standout in whatever you do, but then leveraging that to say, hey, who else should I know within this industry? What should I be doing? Use the experience of the people that are giving you the opportunities to then find out more about what even exists in that world. Who are the key players? What are the opportunities? What should you be doing to get yourself out there and be not just an applicant, but a human that somebody already knows and stands out?
I think that's a great piece of advice too, right? Is like, find your thing, right? Find what makes you different and kind of stick with that. So that's great. Alex, so as someone who wasn't in co-op, did you work during your summers between your semesters?
Yes. So my undergrad, I did. My undergrad was at Queen's, so it wasn't in, and then my program didn't have like a co-op opportunity. So I did work in the summers. I will say that it wasn't anything that really helped kind of where I wanted to get to or what I was going to do. Is more just like, it's the summertime, like let's make some money, and then kind of go back to school in the fall. It was more so, and this isn't co-op, but like my practicum placement in my master's was, kind of the only thing I can really maybe kind of compare to co-op. I was working over the summers, but nothing that kind of really set me up for what I wanted to do long term. I think also at that point, I was struggling a little bit with like thinking through, which maybe some people here are thinking through, like, what do you want to do long term? Like, what does that look like for you, right? So
I think that's a great point too, is like, yes, you want to try and set yourself up for success, but you can also use those summers to do something that you love. Is it a benefit in some cases if you do something towards your degree? Absolutely. Is it a necessity? Not necessarily, right? So I think that that's a really good point.
I'll jump back in here on a point for that, actually, because this is something I was thinking about when you sent us the original email of the things that we're going to chat about. Because when I was thinking back to it, my classmates were often worried when they didn't think that the opportunities they were getting in co-op were directly related to what they wanted or what they thought at the time they wanted to do after they graduated, right? And first of all, that changes 20 times for the average human. So don't feel like you have to pinpoint it right away. But I think the more important thing was finding the value in the opportunities that you did get. It doesn't have to be the exact thing that you want to do after. And so then my resume is filled with, 15 different things that all have nothing to do with what I want to do afterwards. But in reality, they all have things that I learned from that contribute to what I ended up doing, right? So don't be discouraged necessarily by, I didn't get the exact field that I want to be in. But what did I learn from this field that I can take and be a better applicant in that field?
No, I think that's a great point, especially with co-ops too, right? Because there's limited co-op jobs in some instances. And yeah, I always say, you'll take something out of it. So find what that something is and then run with that. So, okay, now, and then I have a question for you. So as somebody who graduated and, has had a couple jobs, how do you suggest someone finding their career path that they really want to go into? Or maybe what led you in that direction?
So I'm not gonna lie, my master's was in nothing exercise related. And I went into kin because I am like if you ask me in high school, if you ask me like going into university, I was like, I always want to do something in athletics. Like I'm a sports fiend. I love playing sports. I love being active. Like I never thought I would go into the chronic condition realm. Mm-hmm. And I ended up going that route because I actually have a mother who has multiple sclerosis, and seeing my mom being able to be more functional because of exercise was huge for me. And so I kind of looked at it from a perspective of someone I love who is ill, who is seeing exercise as a way to improve their overall health. And then me, who is like, I exercise because it's good for my physical and mental health, and I just love sports. And then seeing kind of both worlds blend together and me seeing what I enjoyed doing based off of that. And in all honesty, I volunteered like crazy. Like I put my hand into everything I possibly could, not only in high school, but in university as well. So like I played varsity soccer. I was at the desk. I was volunteering at Kids Ability. I volunteered at Grand River Hospital in the Cancer Center. I was kind of like everywhere. I even was like doing like a physiotherapy assistant at Waterloo Sports Medicine. So I tried to kind of learn as much as I could to be like, what is it that I truly enjoy? And then try to move from there. Because in all honesty, my master's was not something that I would be like, oh, I was so passionate about. But I also had a prof who was like incredible. She was super respectful with what I valued and what I didn't, what I wanted to work towards, what I didn't. What my overall goals were, what I was trying to actually gain out of like having a master's degree, and then kind of moving forward based off of like Derek had said, like picking what I valued in each volunteer / work experience, and then being like, this is what I'm passionate about. I was also fortunate that then going into an actual work setting, so like I worked at the Y, I did community-based programming, and as soon as I was there for a year, I was like, I enjoy this, but I want more of the clinical aspect of this. So then I moved into something that was more clinical, which was great, learned a tremendous amount. But then I stepped away from that because I also was like, what I value in care is starting to shift from what the value of care in a hospital setting potentially was. So then now I'm kind of looking at it from a perspective of, I know how I want to be able to support people. So I moved into my own business, I guess you could say, but I would never say from the start of university that I was like, oh yeah, I'm for sure going to be a business owner. Like I know for sure how I'm going to go about this. And so I like, it was honestly luck of the draw to some degree, but I definitely found what I was passionate about in each setting and kind of pulled from there to guide me to kind of where I am right now.
What it is what do you really like?
Cool. Yeah, and I think sometimes that's the way that it works, right? Like you don't know something that like you never really would have expected.
They'd say,
it might lead you down that road, and like that's totally okay. So yes, thanks for sharing that. Okay. So TZ, one of our co-op students
you
here
wanted
with us
to add in before we wrap things up.
I know you submitted a few questions. Did you have any you wanted to unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, it's nice to have those pre-submitted ones so students can go back, and watch it and be able to understand, where it's coming from, and those people who can then go back and
my
get
first question is for Naima.
Thanks so much
what was something significant that you learned from the process of opening your business, and like what did you learn that you can help others that might be looking into going down that route?
Yeah, so specific to business or specific to like exercise prescription?
I think specific to business.
Okay, so with regards to owning a business, I'm not gonna lie, I'm like still learning. So my business will be open for a full year as of March 1st, which is pretty crazy, like in its own location. And I would definitely say that don't be too hard on yourself if there's something you are like missing or you learn like 3 months into owning a business. So with owning a business, there are a lot of like legal components. So like how much money do you make and then have to have an HST number, for example. How do you register your business? How do you advertise for your business? How do you budget for your business? All of those components for me came gradually. So I looked at it from a perspective of, could I afford rent somewhere? If I could, what would be my monthly budget? And how would I then bring in clients where that budget would be sustained day in and day out so I don't crash within a full year? So that's the first component that I thought about. And then I worked on budget in a 5-year span, if that makes sense. So I would say in 5 years, what is my goal to make? Would I be able to continue paying rent at the current cost if there was inflation? What are other expenses on your business that you have to factor in, whether that's like as an RKIN and a CSEP CEP? What are my like yearly fees for my certifications, my first aid, all of that stuff? And then being able to budget it out on a yearly basis. So I would say the first thing, if you were planning to run your own business, is look at your budget, because most oftentimes people don't do that and they overshoot. And that's usually why a business within the first 5 years fails, unfortunately. And I would also say read a lot of business-based books. Like, I don't know a thing about business. I didn't take a single business course. And I also looked into what the city of Waterloo has for small business owners. So I actually took a program. It was 4 months in duration, and it was called the basically the Small Business Startup through the city of Kitchener-Waterloo. And they basically go through a 4-month span of teaching you, like, how do you build your avatar, which is like your clientele? How do you budget? You have to actually do a presentation, and then you can get up to a $5,000 grant to start your business. So definitely look to see what the city that you're hoping to open a business in also provides to support small businesses. Does that help? Hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's great for sure. And like you said, you're someone who doesn't have business knowledge, and you were able to do it. So don't let those things necessarily deter you either, right?
Yeah.
Back over to you, Tazeen.
Okay. My next question is for Derek. What was a challenge that you had to face moving so far from home, and how did you overcome it?
Okay. Yeah. I am a unique case, I think, in that I knew I was coming out here long before I did, right? So I think my experience might be different than somebody who chases an opportunity to another place. I'm, very cognizant of the fact that a lot of people choose their location based on what they want to do and where the opportunities are. I was the opposite. I went to Vancouver and then would get an opportunity here based on that. And I put the place first to the point where it was obnoxious. Like, I talked about it too much.
I even remember him talking about it.
in my one class, in my master's, our prof, Kelly McClinchy, said, we can leave 15 minutes early if Derek doesn't say the word Vancouver for the rest of the class. So we left 15 minutes early that day. So I think that a lot of people might have different experiences than me because I was prepared for that move. I can recognize that if I wasn't, there's a whole lot that you don't kind of consider in going to a place where you don't have a support system. So going and having that kind of isolation, you go from being in a university setting where you're surrounded by your classmates, and even if you're not best friends with all your classmates, you still have that shared connection with them, that support system, that group that you are in a similar situation with. I then had family in the Waterloo region as well, so I was close to everybody. So coming out to a place that is very far from home, not having that support system, you then just have to make extra efforts to find the people with common interest. For me, I signed up for an adult recreational basketball league, and I met a few people. I then was obviously working at a few different community centers, so I was kind of incorporated with folks who had gone through the recreation stream out in BC, and okay, these folks have common interests with me. And so now 6 years out, I do have some friends out here that I've met through work, through various opportunities. I do have an uncle out here, which is important to note as well, because I always had a bit of a safety line that helped me for sure, if you can have that wherever you end up. But just, knowing that it will be a change, it will be maybe a bit more difficult to make friends as an adult in a new place, but just coming in and being open to finding people in whatever situations that you put yourself in. And in some cases, you find yourself a wife and you have a child, and here we are.
Thanks for sharing, Derek. Maybe you have one more for Alex, Daisy?
My questions for Alex were already answered, actually, so I don't at the moment.
Amazing. That sounds fun. Okay, I have one for you, Alex. You're not off the hook, don't worry. Can you tell us what a project leader means, and what do you do in that role?
Yeah, for sure. I know that's such a vague, as I've kind of been reflecting on this, thinking that, maybe a question like this comes up or something like that. It's a very vague title. And I know when people say project manager, like, what does that mean? What does that look like? It's also like not the sexiest like job title. So like it's not, you don't wake up and you're like, I want to be a project leader or project manager. But I actually really like it. And it's kind of surprising going off. I think that some other people have kind of talked about, and Naime talked about like not really thinking what direction you might go in. Similar to Naime, I always wanted to kind of go in like more of a sport athletic direction. I did physical and health education as my undergrad. That kind of brought me to my MPH. And then at Ophia, it's kind of a bit of a blend between public health and physical and health education, which is nice. So as a projects leader, there's a lot of like, more like a lot of planning and not necessarily, I don't want to say it's uninteresting, but some kind of logistical things that you need to do to plan a project. So from the onset, you'll develop a work plan, and the projects that we lead are funded from a whole whack of different people. Like we get funding from the Ministry of Education, we get funding from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, we'll get funding from other organizations like Parasport Ontario or Medical Alert Canada, from corporations like TD or Meridian. We have, I think, some pharmaceutical companies like Novo Nordisk. So we get funding from all different sorts of sources, and they will be funding us for specific projects that they want us to help kind of result in specific or like ideal desired like outcomes. So whether that's developing a new program, developing resources, maybe it's professional learning for educators, those are kind of our main outputs that as a project leader, I'm helping to develop. So from the very beginning, it's kind of planning, what does this look like? Like, how are we going to go through this if it's a 1-year project term? How do we want to start this, and how are we going to get to our desired outcomes and our output? And then throughout that whole process, it's depending on what that project is resulting in. If it's like, let's say it's a new resource, it's going to be consulting with subject matter experts. So I can maybe use a project that I'm working on right now as an example. I'm working on resources on gender-based violence prevention. So we work with subject matter experts in the gender-based violence space to help us with content. We hire a lot of external vendors to help us with if we're developing videos, if we have to, make posters or make designs, things like that, working with graphic designers. So it's a lot of collaborating with a lot of other people, working with subject matter experts in whatever space or whatever topic area we're working on. Some more kind of like logistical things like managing a budget. And I was talking about kind of budgeting for, obviously, if you have a small business, we also have budgets with the funding that we're given by our funders. So making sure that we're getting things done on time and within our budget. But a lot of collaboration with a lot of people, which I think is what I enjoy most about my specific role, is working with really interesting and really cool people, a lot of knowledgeable people. People are really passionate about the areas that they work in. I've also done a lot of work in the inclusive physical education space. So working with, for example, Parasport Ontario and other disability sport organizations for kind of creating resources for educators to ensure that they're providing inclusive physical education in schools. And so a lot of people who are really passionate, really knowledgeable, and a lot of opportunities to also go and share at whether it's conferences, whether it's kind of meetings with other organizations, what we're doing in this space, and do some idea generating, figure out what else is needed within this space and how else can we support kids and students with kind of healthy, active living. Hopefully that kind of gave you a bit of an answer, Caitlin, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think the key there is like wearing many hats, right? Yeah. Like being able to really, have that knowledge and switch around and do a lot of those things, which are things maybe you did learn or didn't learn in school, but being able to be adaptive and really take in those new skills, I think are really important too. Mm-hmm. So actually going off of that, kind of a good segue here to the next question is, what skills do you think are important to have in your field? Who wants to start on that one?
I'll go. I think the big one for me is communication. And that's because a lot of the people I work with have some sort of chronic condition, whether that's like diabetes, heart disease, and whatnot. So although there is an exercise prescription, there's other components that impact their well-being. So being able to communicate effectively on a larger scale to be like, yes, we're exercising here, but if your blood sugar isn't to target, and you're not going back to your family doctor to say like, hey, I am now exercising, which is something I wasn't doing previously, then like insulin levels and their medication obviously has to be updated. So I would say communication is important, not only for the individual I'm working with, but then looking at it from a greater, like kind of like a larger scale in the sense of everyone in their family healthcare team or their health circle, and being able to communicate effectively in order to support the individual that you're truly trying to help.
I can maybe go off of, sorry, I wasn't sure if you wanted someone to just hop in there, Caitlin, or not. I'll maybe go off that. I had a feeling that, and Derek, once you answer, we might all say somewhat similar things. Like I think communication is probably going to be the biggest thing in almost anyone that you ask. Communicating with, in Naima's case, it's like patients, and in my case, it would be team members as well as external members of our kind of larger team, funders, people that we're collaborating with, consultants. It's so important to be able to communicate effectively, and along with that, kind of on a similar line, also teamwork for me. So being able to work as a team. When for the projects that I lead, like you can't do all of it alone. So you need to be able to work effectively in a team. And in my role, it's leading a team and making sure everyone ensures that their thoughts and their voices are heard. And you're not just kind of saying, it's kind of my way or the highway. Like everyone has their input is shared and it's valued. And so being able to kind of work effectively in a team for sure. And then also kind of specific to my role, would be like facilitating. If anyone's had, experience facilitating, whether it's meetings, we do a lot of focus groups with people to try to figure out like what's needed in this space. We work a lot with educators. What do you need as an educator to help you with connecting to the health and phys curriculum, or doing this with your students, whatever that is. So being able to kind of confidently facilitate meetings, sessions, focus groups, presenting in various kind of settings. And I feel like that's all kind of related, but yeah, that's what I would say for my space in particular.
I'll jump on that communication train and make it 3. For sure, that is the one. And I think of a municipal context. There are ways that I have to communicate with my staff, and there are ways that I have to communicate with the public, and those are very different ways of communicating. I can't necessarily roll out my entire plan to you as a member of the public when you complain about something. I can't necessarily show you everything that's happening until that information is made public. But I have to assure you that, we're not all idiots over here at the city. We're doing things intentionally. You aren't privy to that information yet because it's public funds, and we're trusted to work in the best interest of the public. So it's a balance of different communication styles, and focusing on that external communication, but also focusing on the workplace culture side of communication, and how am I leading my team? How am I contributing as a member of somebody else's team because of the hierarchy of the city? So that then I think plays into what Alex was talking about with the teamwork side of things. In this field, at least, you're never going to be working alone. I'm not Naima, just running a little business on my own. Everything.
I still work at UW too, people. Okay, I am with people 24/7.
No offense meant, but I will always be tied. Like my work will always be tied to multiple other people as well, right? And so there isn't necessarily one work style that you have to have, or preference for this versus that, but you have to be able to then adapt to the way that other people work, because they're not going to be exactly like you at all times, and you're going to be depending on them depending on you. So definitely that teamwork side of things as well. Sorry,
can I also just jump in? No. So also just to jump in though, like skills as a whole, like I think there are multiple different skills you need in any work setting, whether that's by yourself, in a group, like school versus not. But I would definitely say the skill set that you struggle with is something you should always work on. And obviously communication, we got to do that day in and day out, whether that's with your family, with your coworkers, whoever it may be. But if you are, let's say, horrible at public speaking, then I would say like sign up to do something that requires you to publicly speak, because at some point in your career, that skill is going to come back. Like regardless, like I can bet my life, like Caitlin, Alex, and Derek have had to do some form of a skill that they would probably be like, yeah, I'm not great at that, but it was required for my job to some degree. So I would definitely say like learn to work at a skill that you definitely struggle at. And the other component of skills as a whole is you will learn things like communication, for example. There are some workplaces that will have you like primarily communicate through email, even though that is a horrible way to communicate, right? But you then have to be like, how can I communicate effectively via email to make sure what I'm actually trying to get across is effective and polite, or whatever the case may be, right? So there's a lot of learning tools within a skill, but definitely if there's a skill you struggle with, I would say work towards more than anything else.
That's a great piece of advice. I would totally agree.
I'll jump in with one last suggestion for something to bring, and it might already be preaching to the converted, because folks at a university setting already might have this, but creative curiosity is something that I very much look for in other folks that I work with, because a lot of people come into a job and they just continue doing the job the way that it is, and it's like, okay, what do I have to do in this job? Okay, I do that. But creative curiosity is what allows people to make improvements in the world and to change systems that should be changed, and brings that extra piece that could set you aside, as we come back to that co-op piece from the beginning, that creative curiosity to understand the way things work and how you fit in and what you can do. And yeah,
no, that's a good point. Sorry. All right, I have 3 questions left here. So if there are any other questions that you want to submit, feel free to do so now, and I will add them in. But if not, we'll wrap up with these 3 here. So this one's going back to your time as a student. So thinking back, however many years ago it was for us now. How were you involved as a student, and how did you manage your time effectively?
Did you say how involved were you as a student?
How were you involved? So what did you do outside of, I guess, probably schoolwork? And then with those additional things, so, was it part-time work? Was it varsity? Was it volunteer? Whatever. And then how did you manage your time effectively?
I can go. So I did too much. No, that's not true. I did a lot, but when I was thinking ahead, again, prepping a little bit for what might be asked, I was trying to think of my time management skills and recognize the ways that they were different from other people's. And so I don't think that there's necessarily one way that you have to manage your time. You just have to find the way that works for you. So I'm not somebody who, schedules every 15 minutes of my life. That really worked for some of my friends, and that's what made them successful. For me, I found that I'm a list person. So I can stay on top of everything that I have, even if it's the final project that's not due for 3 months, it's on my list, and I can then prioritize based on that. And I was incredibly busy. I was working, anywhere from 2 to 4 jobs at a time, typically. I was the assistant coach of the women's basketball team at one point. I was volunteering with different organizations in nonprofit sport and adaptive and inclusive sport. So my plate was always quite full. which meant that I missed out on some opportunities socially and all that kind of stuff. But I was doing what I valued and what was important to me, and I was able to keep my head above water by finding what worked for me, which was this list. So any spare time that I had, I'm thinking of what I still have on my plate. I'm then scheduling things in as I need to. But I always found I was ahead of the 8 ball, as it were, and not coming up to deadlines and really having to crunch because I thought of things ahead of time and I used my spare time effectively, even if it was a month before something was coming due. And that's what worked for me. So my suggestion would be to find what works for you and don't let all that you have to do on the school side stop you from being involved in other things, because I wouldn't have met these lovely people in front of you if I wasn't involved in the athletic department and all that. So.
Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, like, you can be involved in a lot of things, but definitely pick what you truly enjoy to be involved in, if that makes sense, because every time you're like, oh, I need to volunteer here so I can gain experience here or know that person here, or whatever the case may be. And that is great. It can definitely help you long term. But if you're going to a volunteer placement or a job that every single day you're like, I hate the 4 hours that I am here, then you're going to feel not only like physically, but emotionally drained after that. And then that's going to impact your schoolwork or whatever else it may be. And I think the biggest thing I noticed, and like even now, is putting time and effort in things that you don't enjoy do not support you long term, like in any way, shape, or form other than burning you out. So truly pick what like matters to you, what you enjoy, and spend your time wisely on that, because I bet you anything, your time management skills or whatever you want to call it to manage everything is going to come a lot easier when you don't feel burnt out going from one thing to another that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, I might just quickly follow up on that, Naime. Yeah, I was going to kind of say the exact same thing. I think as I reflect back on like what I did in my undergrad, kind of aside from school and how I balanced it, I feel like I kind of categorized them into like 3 almost categories, like those extra kind of curriculars, things that I genuinely enjoyed and were like a little bit more social, like things like intramurals, like kind of intramural sports, like your clubs, like that was kind of one thing. Second one were things that for me that I thought might kind of help me down the road with like a career, but I still enjoyed. So for example, like I was a strength and conditioning coach at Queen's, and then I also volunteered at a program called Revved Up, which was working with individuals with physical and cognitive disabilities, doing rehabilitation programs. So both of those were things that filled my cup. I enjoyed, but I also thought might help me kind of down the road and, kind of figure out whether it's looking good on a resume or whether it's helping me figure out like what I might want to do long term. So they kind of serve both those purposes. And then there was another one, which was kind of more like having a part-time job, like working at, the athletic center. And that was something that maybe like I enjoyed a little bit, but was kind of more for like financial. So for me, there was kind of those 3 categories. And the most important ones, to get back to Naima's point, were the ones that I kind of like enjoyed the most. And like those were the things that kind of helped me in terms of like that social aspect at school, but then also makes you feel like kind of helps fill your cup and keeps you going and kind of keeps you motivated. And there's definitely time to do those things in, your schedule and find what you enjoy. And ideally there are things that you both enjoy and can help you kind of figure out what you maybe want to do long term, right?
Absolutely. All right, last question for you here as a team. And I'm actually interested to hear your answers. Do you have any recommendations on how students can network with professionals who are in their current fields? So did you network with professionals in your undergrad, or was there ways that you were able to create those connections, or did you find it difficult? Anything on that? Yeah.
I will be completely honest. I didn't network with any professional in like while I was in school. Like it's not like I went to like I don't know, let's say a physio clinic and was like, oh my God, I love this physio, so I want to network with them. And just randomly. What I did do though, is I networked a lot within the people at UW. So, and I'll give you a great example of that. Some of you probably know like Carol Russell or I'm trying to like Maddie Noble, like those individuals where you like, when you have a volunteer experience with them and you have a great experience because they're
I will be
completely honest, I didn't network with like what you're doing and what you're trying to do. Once you then leave, you have the ability to kind of go back to those people, right? So now for myself, looking to see long-term, like if I want volunteer kin students to come help at the gym, I now know who to kind of go to, right? And be able to kind of network with them. So I would say networking within the current like group of people that you currently have at UW is probably a great way to start. And then if you know specific people kind of out in the community, definitely reach out. No one is going to be like, hey, I don't want to talk to you, you're a grad student, right? Like they will provide you with feedback. So do not be fearful of that, but definitely work within UW right now and like talk to as many people as you need, ask as many questions as you can, like just absorb as much information as you can because you have access to it right there at your fingertips.
I can go next. So I'll be the first, and maybe everyone kind of feels this way. I'll be the first to admit that like networking is a really kind of freaky thing. It can sound very scary. It's intimidating. And if you're trying to connect with someone who kind of like almost like cold call, like reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, for example, it feels very awkward and uncomfortable. Similar to Naima, I didn't do any networking in my undergrad. I didn't start networking until my master's degree. And networking within my program. So thinking through who is currently working. So because the MPH is online, everyone still had jobs that they were working, whether they were working part-time or still full-time. So kind of taking a look at who's working where, is anyone working in kind of spaces that I'm interested in. And then I did also start doing some kind of cold reaching out to people on LinkedIn. So I would go on LinkedIn, I would kind of browse what are some really interesting organizations that are interesting to me. And I would reach out to somebody to kind of just chat with them and not with the intention to necessarily get a job, but more to learn about what are they doing in this space? What do they like about this role? And just like really having that kind of conversation around, what are they doing? What do they do? What is their organization doing? And starting to kind of create like those warm connections. And I did that a couple times through LinkedIn to just talk with random people who were working in different spaces. And it's uncomfortable and it's awkward, but once I started doing that, and I already knew Ophia, so that's not how I got my job at Ophia, but that started opening doors for me. And I started having more conversations with people. So even though it's super awkward and super uncomfortable, get comfortable like with that kind of uncomfortableness, if that makes sense. And I've been reached out to by a number of people who want to just ask me questions, have quick meetings, and I don't say no to anyone. So like Naima said, no one's going to say no to you unless they for some reason don't see your message. So have those uncomfortable or maybe awkward interactions, but if you kind of continue to do that, I think you'll see like good things come from that, and doors will open and opportunities will come to you.
Yeah. So on my side of things, it's a bit unique because municipalities are a unionized environment. So within that, networking isn't going to get me a job at that introductory level, right? So my networking now looks much different than it did when I was coming out of school. I'm mostly networking at conferences and or out of necessity reaching out to another municipality to see, how do you do this? Have you had this problem? And then you kind of make connections based on who does similar things to you in other municipalities. But in my master's, I was fortunate enough to use the connections around me. In this case, if any Reckies are on the call, Sarah Houston, I was good friends with her husband through my time in athletics. He was at Renison College. We crossed paths a number of times in that regard. He had known somebody from a previous job, and it's all of this kind of somebody knows somebody knows somebody. So that ended up being the director of recreation for the city of Vancouver at the time, which is a great person to know if you're trying to join recreation at the city of Vancouver. Again, that couldn't get me a job because a unionized hiring process, all of that, I still did have to start from the bottom, but I was able to then use the folks around me to say, okay, who do we know in this world? Who can that introduction be made with? So I was very fortunate in that regard, but I'd be silly not to quickly mention on that unionized side of things, hiring cycles come and go, and job markets are wide open versus flooded and seemingly all over the place. But if you are looking to get into something that is with a municipality or a unionized environment like that, a lot of opportunities don't go external. So my one big thing is when I moved here, I couldn't necessarily leverage those networking connections to get in at any sort of level where I am right now, because you have to come through the system to get here in most contexts. Where we're at right now, we have such a shortage that a lot of things are being posted external, and folks can come right out of university into some of these jobs that took me 4 or 5 years to get to, in which case you're very fortunate if that's you. But my recommendation across the board would be, if you do want to get into that, yes, reach out, who do you know, but then find out from them how to best get into the system that you want to get into, because if it is a unionized system that requires levels of seniority, start building that now. If you want to work at the City of Waterloo recreation complexes, because that will build your seniority to get you something, awesome. Whatever the system is that you're wanting to get into, find out about it. Even if the networking piece doesn't mean you'll get the job, the networking piece can help you find out about what you're trying to do. And for me, that was the case of learning what jobs existed. What can I do in this system? How do I have to get in? And that was a very beneficial conversation for me, learning about what I wanted to get into.
And it's great to kind of see that from all angles too. So I think that that's really beneficial as well. So, well, we are at 1 o'clock just like that. So thanks so much for submitting so many questions ahead of time. It's nice to be able to fill up the whole hour and, to get all the expertise from the three of you. So I just want to take some time here to say thank you for coming out and for, let's say, networking some of these students here. And now, you kind of have three friendly faces in three different areas. So, use the support around you. Thanks for attending. We do have another one in mid-March that you'll see come out. So we'll have 3 different alum focusing on something else. So I hope that you enjoyed your time. This is recorded and will be posted as well if anyone wants to rewatch or go back if you missed something. So thank you everyone for coming. It was great to see all of you, and happy, what are we, Wednesday? Happy Wednesday. I'm like, what day is it? All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, guys. Thanks for having us.
So good to see you too. Lovely to meet you, Alex.
Bye. Yeah, bye, Derek.
Bye.